on locations throughout the world.
Standing passengers, please do not lean against the doors.
Picture goers, we bring to you new films of interest.
Chicago in State is next. Doors open on the left.
The miracle of the motion picture.
Please be considerate when talking on your phone or listening to electronic devices.
Chicago's a nice town if you're looking for pizza.
Welcome to 4 Stars, a Chicago film podcast. A podcast where we talk about movies set in Chicago.
Each episode, we'll be discussing a different movie that's set in or was filmed in the Chicago area, its cultural/historic relationship to Chicago, and whether it's a good representation of the city.
We want to figure out what makes Chicago movies different from movies about other cities, and to answer the question of what a Chicago movie even is. I am one of your hosts. I'm the GM of the Heights Theater and a filmmaker, Jeremy Martyr.
And I'm Paco Alvarez, a journalist based in Chicago. And on today's episode, we will be discussing 1994's Go Fish, directed by Rose Trochet.
Paco, do you have an ace?
No, sorry.
You don't.
Go Fish.
Go Fish, please.
Wait, who says Go Fish and Go Fish?
It's during one of the scenes where they're
No, I'm saying literally in the game Go Fish. Which player says Go Fish?
Oh, like when you're playing Go Fish, you
Yeah.
say it to the other person.
If they
So
don't have
they
a
have to
card.
go fish. If they don't have a card,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Do you just want to play Go Fish?
Yeah, we just play Go Fish.
All right.
You know how there's those
bust up
podcasts that play board games? Would just be a Go Fish playing podcast.
Yeah, that would be really boring. But instead, we're going to be talking about one of the seminal works of 90s indie cinema. Later on the episode, we will be joined by Director of Marketing and Publicity at Music Box Films, as well as the programmer of the Sapphopalooza series, Elizabeth Arnott. But before we do that, do you want to talk a little bit, Paco, about what was going on in Chicago in 1994?
Yes. So Go Fish, as we talk about, premiered in Sundance 1994 in January and was given not like a wide release, but like a selected theaters release in various cities on July 8th, 1994, I believe. But I couldn't really find any news around that, so I decided to go by the New York City premiere, on June 10th, 1994. So June 10th, 1994. This is from the Chicago Sun-Times. Won't make sense now, but it will in a bit. The headline was $750,000 raised for Rusty defense. So the article is about House Representative
Rusty the Snowman.
Yeah, Rusty the Snowman. Was about Congressman Dan Rostenkowski, who had raised more than $750,000 for his legal defense fund during the last 5 months of 1993. He was the head of the Ways and Means Committee. He was a Illinois congressman, and obviously I was interested by a line in this article that said the congressman was forced to step down as chairman when he was indicted, but he could reclaim the chair if he's cleared of the 17 felony charges. So obviously I wanted to know what he was indicted for, but I will point out that so the article is about how a bunch of people had donated a lot of money to his legal defense, including
no one of any particular importance, right?
No one. There was, the Burlington Northern Railroad, Anheuser-Busch, their Political Action Committee. That's funny, they have a PAC. The Federal Express, and some no-name hotel tycoon named Donald Trump.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Yes, he was in Home Alone 2, and we talked about the Home Alone movies.
It's one of the movies we covered. That's where I know him from.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So Dan Rostenkowski. So as I mentioned, he was an Illinois congressman. He was elected in 1958. So he was old as fuck when in 1994. His father was a Chicago alderman. And Rostenkowski's mentor was Richard Daley, Chicago mayor, the first Richard Daley the first. And Rostenkowski was he was just like when you become a congressperson in Illinois, you kind of don't, you just stay there until you retire, pretty much. It's very rare that someone, especially a Democratic congressman, will get primaried. So he just kind of like stayed as a congressman for many years. He was really instrumental in helping push the 1986 Tax Reform Act from Ronald Reagan. But unfortunately for him, in the spring of 1994, he was indicted on 17 charges, including federally indicted, including misuse of public and government funds, fraud, conspiracy, and concealing material facts. So
the big ones.
Yeah, big ones. The big thing that he was indicted for was part of this, like the Congressional Post Office scandal, which was between 1978 and 1991. He allegedly took at least $50,000 in cash disguised as purchases of stamps from the House Post Office, and then so he would use like vouchers to like get stamps, and then he would sell those stamps for cash. So he was just like kind of like stealing from like the post office, which you should never do. I think like the post office is like the one thing you like just can't do crime against. Like don't fuck with them.
That's I mean, there's some famous cases where if you fuck with the post office.
Yeah, I think their inspectors are just way more on the case. Like right now, you can kind of do most federal crimes in this world
Not
right
against
now.
the post office.
Don't do it against them. He also had my favorite type of scheme, which was the classic kickback ghost employee scheme, where he had allegedly hired a bunch of 14 individuals to work for him over some summers.
Casper, Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Oh, what other ghosts did he hire? Slimer.
Yeah. And he hired just a bunch of guys, and they didn't actually do anything, and then he just charged Congress for them. So that's like,
oh, cool. So were they real people, or
yeah, they were real people. They just
they just didn't work for him.
Yeah, they just didn't do anything. They just didn't do anything. And he would give them less money than
because they weren't doing a job.
Yeah, and then he would keep the difference. If anyone wants to do that with me, I will do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you want to pay me
to do nothing,
yeah, I will do it.
And you get the kickback.
And I won't tell anyone.
And guess what? I won't get on a podcast and talk about
it. Yeah. And then he also allegedly used office funds to buy expensive gifts for his family and friends. And that's where his witness tampering allegation came in. There was an engraver who had inscribed plaques for crystal sculptures that he was giving as gifts to his friends. Rostenkowski had gone up to the guy and tried to get him to not testify against him, which is a no-no. That's illegal. You should not do that. Ultimately, he was indicted on 17 charges. He pled down to 2, I believe. He served 17 months in prison, and then good old Bill Clinton gave him a full federal pardon in 2000.
So crazy.
And do you want to know? So he got indicted during an election year, and then he lost that election to a Republican. But do you know who took the seat after the Republican?
Who?
Rod Blagojevich.
So it's a hallowed seat.
Yes.
A clean seat.
Yes, a really clean seat. But that's what was going on in 1984. Rostenkowski, the fall of the great Dan Rostenkowski. Rusty the Snowman.
Rusty the Snowman. Well, yeah, I'm excited to hear more about Rusty if he ever comes up again.
Yes. And now our conversation with Elizabeth Arnott on Go Fish.
Okay, we want to invite onto the podcast Elizabeth Arnott. Elizabeth is the director of marketing and publicity at Music Box Films, and is the programmer of the Sapphopalooza series, now playing at the Music Box Theater. How are you doing, Elizabeth? I'm
great. Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
I'm really, really happy to have you on. We are talking about Go Fish today, one of the headlining films, I will say, in Sapphopalooza, as it is the reigning Chicago film in your series. Can you talk a little bit, Elizabeth, about your connection to the city of Chicago, how you got here, etc.?
Yeah, so I moved here from Detroit, the Detroit area. I grew up in Macomb. It's a suburb, pretty rural. And then I lived in Ferndale, which is right outside of Detroit, for a number of years, but moved to Chicago from the Detroit area for college. I went to Columbia College. I studied entertainment media management with a focus in music business and public relations. It's a mouthful. Basically, a communications major in entertainment, I suppose. Um, and I ended up interning for an agency that did work for major movie studios. And then I moved back to Detroit for a little bit, and I worked as a publicist for that agency. And then I moved back to Chicago, and I'm here, and I've been here for 5 years. So college, and then now just living and working.
There's something very magical about that Detroit to Chicago
Oh, yeah.
pipeline.
There's so many people.
Yeah. I feel like it's half the Music Box staff at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's also like, I mean, I love Detroit. It's an amazing city. I love it. It's just this is it's a more major city. There's just more opportunity here. That's the reality. And so I think that's why that happens most of the time.
I agree. I think Detroit's one of the I don't want to call it like a hidden gem because it's Detroit, but it's like people, I mean, especially this is something that Chicago has too. There's a media narrative that surrounds the city,
Yep.
and an idea that people have of that city. And that doesn't mean that a city doesn't have problems, like Chicago has plenty of problems.
Sure.
But our experience of living in them, your experience of living in Detroit, it often doesn't match up with those media narratives. That's sort of the reason why we started this podcast here.
Yeah.
And we're really happy to have you on. Um, Speaking of media narratives, there is not that much opportunity in the exhibition space, in the theatrical space for queer films, for films by and series for lesbians. Can you talk a little bit about the inception of the Sapphopalooza series, where the inception of the idea came from, and how it came to the Music Box?
For sure. So I think in the year 2000, Film Forum, an art house venue in New York, they did a series called Sapphorama. It was programmed by their like repertory programmers there. Obviously, that was a long time ago. A few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, some newer programmers decided to bring that series back, and their series is comprehensive. They did like 40 films, and they did like several screenings of them. um, and I just noted it because I thought it was something really special, and I talked to the Music Box about doing something similar, and seeing if we could make it happen but make it our own. And it was my suggestion was noted, um and I was a broken record about it, honestly. And I just kind of wouldn't let it go. I was like, no, I don't think you understand me. This will do well, like this there's an audience for this. Like, also it'll probably bring in a new audience. Like, I think they're like, this is something worth exploring. And Projectionist and programmer Rebecca Lyon took my recommendation and my suggestion very seriously, and put it on the schedule, and helped me make it happen. So I owe her big time. And it happened last year. Sapphopalooza, we did it. We went big, and then it performed really well. Yeah, it was a hit. So we brought it back for a second year, and it feels really special.
What can you remind us some of the titles from last year, just to build the Sapphopalooza canon here for us?
Yeah. So we did, I mean, we did some smaller ones. We did Murder and Murder, which is from 1996. Um, and we had talent in town for that. One of the actresses, Kathleen Chalfant. We also did like But I'm a Cheerleader, Bound, Watermelon Woman, Saving Face. We did a newer title that had just hit theaters called Queens of Drama, which is like a French musical almost, about it's just like these lesbians who are performers, and one of them becomes like a pop star and the other one doesn't, and about their relationship, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I think we did like 12 or 13 titles last year, and we're doing 12 this year.
Other than Go Fish, are there any that you are super excited about this year?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm excited about all of them. I don't. I'm gonna be like I watch everything. Um, I mean, as programmers do, but I'm very dedicated. I want to watch everything. I want to make sure that like it fits, like what I'm curating like fits together. There's a lot that I wanted to program that just like didn't make sense, or they didn't like fit together, or I didn't want it to be the last one of the series because that's like how it was shaking out or something like that. So I had to like rework things. But for me, one of the biggest ones is Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer. We're playing it at midnight on Friday. And we're also doing a gay music video night. So I'm doing like a pre-show. I'm taking suggestions from people. Like they've literally submitted, I made a Google form. They submitted music videos. I've curated their like combed through all of the music videos, put together like 5 or 6 from their suggestions, and we're packaging those together to play before Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer. But the reason why I'm calling this out is because I tried to play it last year, and we couldn't. Like they don't know who has. It's not like a movie, like a normal movie where it's like, okay, the studio has the rights or a producer has the rights or someone knows where that stuff exists, and they have a DCP or whatever it might be. No one knows who owns it. So I have like contacted anyone and everyone I could from like that world, from Janelle's network, from like the, people who were, listed in the credits of the film. And I've like emailed an Instagram message and like so many people. And like last year I went through like Atlantic Records, went through a number of people who just kept like pushing me off to someone else, off to someone else. They couldn't figure it out. And then this year, I finally got to the right. Well, I got to someone who was at least as dedicated as I was in figuring this out. And they allowed us to play it. So we're doing a screening, which, like, I don't know if something like this has ever happened before, maybe when it first premiered. So we're doing that. We're playing that. And I'm very excited because every time I've ever watched it, I'm like, wow, I want to hear this like in surround sound loud. I want to be with like community and experience this collectively. So I'm very excited for that. Last night we did Set It Off, which was high energy, but also, spoiler alert, sad ending. So, but it was, yeah, but it was a really great experience. Um, and then what else? We did Carol on Mother's Day because Carol is a Mother's Day film just as much as it's a Christmas film.
That's true.
And I stand by that. Yeah. So doing a handful of good ones. What else? I'm trying to think.
Liz and the Bluebird.
Liz and the Bluebird.
So Liz and the Bluebird is co-presented by Animation Adventures, which is a program that I do. This was a movie that was being championed by Asia Essex, who's been working. It's going to be introed by Asia. A very, very cool anime that is partially done in a hand-drawn style.
It's gorgeous.
It's so good. God,
it's so delicate.
It really is. It's so interesting, and
Yeah.
I love I loved so many of the details of that movie. So everybody should go see that. That is Sunday morning, right? 11:30 a.m.
Sunday morning, yep, 11:30. Yeah. And then we're partnering with, CFS to do Salome, silent film on Saturday.
Oh, that's gonna be cool.
Yeah. It's great. And then Bend It Like Beckham, Rated Q, it's already sold out. So
yeah. Sorry.
Yep. Sorry about it.
You'll lose.
But also it's AAPI month. So I have, we have like 2 like Asian cinema films that I feel really proud to have, programmed and put in a series.
Bend It Like Beckham may be in my top 5 most watched films of all time. And I haven't seen it in the last 10 years. I watched it so often when I was young.
Was it a comfort watch?
It was an older sister watch. Like my sister was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So it would just be on, and I liked movies. But I did. I mean, that movie is very special. And is I cannot wait to hear what that crowd is like. That's gonna be Wonderful. Who was performing before that one? Do you know?
I know that she has two South Asian performers, so very fitting. And she's also trying to get like a, I guess they have a connection to like an Indian cuisine food truck that we're
Ooh,
maybe gonna get in front of the
that's
music
really
box.
exciting.
So yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, so Cortland Kelly introduced Set It Off. Cortland is a
Yes.
friend of the podcast. So is Rebecca Lyon, both
Hmm.
former guests. We're collecting the collaborators on Sapphopalooza. It's very exciting that we get to talk with you, Elizabeth. This movie we're going to talk about today, Go Fish, fits so perfectly within that realm. I think when people think of sapphic films, when people think of the lesbian canon, this is not one that's always brought up, but it is incredibly important within the lesbian community. And it is very, very important in terms of the history of independent cinema. Um, the look, the feel. I'm very, very happy that Sapphopalooza is foregrounding this one with talent involved, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
Writer actor Guinevere Turner is going to be in town. Very excited about it.
This movie is very, very special. When was the first time you watched this, Elizabeth?
Good question. It had to have been like maybe 5 years ago, somewhere in there, well before programming Sapphopalooza. Um, it's it's interesting because I think yes, it's like community wise, such a like it's like a staple. Like it's a lesbian staple, in my opinion. Um, but it feels so. I mean, it is so independent, and it also feels so independent that I think it's just like not one of the mainstream that is talked about on the regular. And I know that the Siskel there was like an anniversary and they had the 4K restoration a couple years ago, which was great. Um, and also part of the reason why I didn't program it last year because I felt like it was too close to that restoration, the anniversary. So happy that we can bring it this year.
Yeah, I feel like when I watched it also like 5-ish years ago. I think at some point it was on the Criterion channel, maybe as part of. I feel like every month they have like a different like they highlight different queer movies. But I feel like when I watched it, it felt like I'd never heard of it, and then it felt like no one else had ever heard of it. And I wonder.
Yeah.
I think it also. I think it just like before the restoration, it existed just in like kind of like shitty copies, and so I wonder. I wonder if now it's becoming more elevated again.
Yeah, for sure. I think also it's like one of those films that's very like word of mouth.
Hmm.
Like you hear about it and Letterbox helps with that now,
Hmm.
right? It's like before it's like you would hear about it because someone else stumbled upon it and they were like, "Oh wow, this like felt so like authentic to the community. You should watch this." And then you watch it and then you're like, "This is incredible. Like I connect so deeply with this." And but now with like Letterbox, it's like my hope is that people will come and see it in person. Everyone will log it, and then their network will see it and have access to it streaming or wherever they can find it.
Yeah, and people who worked on this project went on to do many, other things. Guinevere Turner was a big part of the L Word, and um, what's her name? Oh my God, Christine Vachon.
Yeah,
Vachon produced like
produce
most
a
of
lot,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
so much.
But
Yeah.
what's his name? Oh my God, Todd Haynes' films. Like one of
Yeah.
the
Yes.
producer of Todd Haynes' films. So it's really interesting to see that this movie is now being sort of brought back into the queer canon and discussed alongside some of these other films, especially as more opportunity increases for queer filmmakers. Um, yeah, I'm very excited for a whole generation to discover this film. I'm very similar to both of you. This is a film that I learned about probably 5 years ago. And that's it's a movie where I'm like, this movie made $2 million at the box office. Like this movie was like kind of a hit
Hmm.
in terms of
Hmm.
like the 90s independent space. Like that's just not a thing that happened very often, especially for a movie like this that was made for under 20,000.
Yeah.
Um
It also premiered at Sundance. It went on to play, I think, like a few other like pretty major festivals, maybe got some like indie nominations. Like it had like a good run. Um yeah, it's impressive.
it won at the Berlin Film Festival for it won the Teddy Award.
That's the
Um
LGBT
mhm,
award. Yeah.
at
At the
Berlin. It
yeah,
won the Audience Award at Deauville in France.
France.
Deauville
Yeah.
is like the American festival in France, right? Where they're like obsessed with American film. Um there it won the GLAAD Media Award,
Hmm.
the Independent Spirit Award. It got nominated. And it was nominated for a grand jury prize at Sundance. It's like this was a very well respected film in that year. And I think went on to inspire countless filmmakers who were in the know, those who were in contact with one another. And this is a movie that was in the lineage of queer criticism, of very important pieces of literature. Its stars met at ACT UP, you know, functions. Like this is
Hmm.
a movie that was birthed out of queer movements of the 80s, and before. Um, it it's fascinating to see its place within the indie scene of the 90s.
Yeah, and you definitely feel that too. Like you can, you feel, even though it's like it is scripted, and I feel like it does feel like maybe a lot some of these performers are or were at the time maybe like non-actors, or like new to performing and on screen or on camera, and but I think that's what makes this special and iconic, and like has made it something that people gravitate towards because it feels so real. Um, and I think that's, I mean, and also it feels so indie, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Most of the actors, I mean, all pretty much all the actors, including Guinevere Turner, were non-professional. Guinevere's the only one I think who went on to continue acting. I think some of the others maybe like had smaller roles, but they were all pretty much like either friends of Rose Troche,
Crochet, maybe,
Trochet,
I think it is. Yeah.
um, and Turner. Like they were all friends of theirs, or they were
Mhm.
just like meet that like the actor who plays Daria, Anastasia Sharp, I think that's her name. They just met her at like she worked at a restaurant that they went to all the time, and they were like, "We got to get this girl in the movie." Like just
I love that.
like a lot of the yeah, just all the actors were just people like they would meet on the street or just like at parties and
I
stuff.
mean, do you ever meet people in person? You're like, just like randomly and be like, if I ever made a movie,
Mm-hmm.
I'd put you in it for sure. I do that all the time, right? Like my local barista, definitely in my movie. So,
And the thing is like this was a movie that was for the community,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like when you're meeting people in those spaces, it's like, well, this person is pretty charismatic, or this person perfectly fits exactly what I'm going for. I One thing that really struck me about the movie is its editing style, and learning that I mean, by the end, that Rose Trochet um uh edit it herself. It feels so like a personal diary. It feels like you're exercising something, you're working through something. And that sort of like disjointed sort of um art school style editing, like especially those transitions where it's like hands and things moving
mhm,
backwards, and it's very
yeah.
impressionistic.
Hmm. Definitely.
I,
And it's interesting because I think I read or heard in an interview at one point that so Guinevere and Rose were dating. And by the end, I think of the film, they were breaking up. But it's kind of interesting because like the opposite thing is happening in the film. So like it's just like an interesting like I guess like evolution of like real life and then what's put into the film, and yeah,
It's the perfect amount of mess. I
wild.
love
Yeah.
it.
No, well, that makes sense. Even more, yeah, adds to the authenticity. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of like the disjointedness, but I think it ends up working in the movie is that they kept running out of money, and like they kept like they had to like keep like taking out credit cards or like taking out loans. Like they kept so like they were I think they filmed it over like a year or two. And the funny thing about you brought up Christine Vachon,
yeah,
she they like so there's this really famous essay from 1992 by B. Ruby Rose, which is called which kind of coined the term new queer cinema. And B. Ruby Rose was mostly just like she was just like talking about how like there's all these like movies mostly by gay men that are coming out at all these like film festivals, kind of like tracing their history and like how they're becoming more popular. Um, and while they were filming, I think Trochet and Turner read that and like were kind of inspired to make Go Fish because like the most of the directors named to that article were gay men, and so they wanted to make a movie for
hmm
lesbians. But then when they ran out of money, they like went through the article and like reached out to every producer of all the other movies of this like new queer cinema and
yeah.
to ask for more money, and Vachon was the only one who like picked up and what like they sent her they like reached out to her and she was like and they sent her like I think they had like 30 to 40 minutes on like videotape and they sent her like what they had and she hooked them up with another producer, John Pearson. So it's just
Christine has great taste.
yeah.
No, I mean, like really though. I'm gonna, if I may, Christine's a producer on a project that was actually just at Sundance this past year.
oh
It's a documentary about Barbara Hammer
oh
called Barbara Forever.
Oh yes.
And it's gonna have a release, I think, later this year. Bridie O'Connor is the filmmaker's name. It's stellar. It's very good. We're playing a film by Barbara Hammer, Nitrate Kisses, which is her feature that was also at Sundance, which I feel like Christine probably had a hand in as well. But yeah, it's like again, like great taste.
yeah, definitely. It is there's like a weird like obviously all these filmmakers were like marginalized and like had a hard time making movies, but that also made it so that like they could like make these connections a lot more easily than I think that like other
Yeah.
people could. I don't know.
They
There's
could
like a
find
weird
each other.
yeah. It was like there's like a weird like push and pull there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think that's like to be said about the queer community generally too,
Mhm.
right? It's like we lean on each other, and we also do everything we can to elevate each other's work, art, um, and also, you know, chosen family is a real thing. So, um, yeah, I don't know, that makes sense and it feels real.
Yeah, there's a few movies that this reminded me of, and I was watching this on Tubi the same time as my partner Caitlin was watching it on Tubi, and Tubi doesn't line up ads, so we kept having to pause every 10 minutes because we would each one of us would get an ad, so we'd have to pause whenever the other one had an ad. So it made for a disjointed watching experience, and I if I was in Chicago, I would be watching this at the Music Box Theater for Sapphopalooza. But the experience of watching it reminded me of so many movies from before and after this. I mean, most notably like Kathleen Collins's movies, like Losing Ground, Watermelon Woman, which came a few years later with Guinevere Turner as well. There's so many movies that feel so personal, and Caitlin and I were like, why? I love movies that feel like this. Like, why aren't there like more movies that have this personal touch? You know what I mean? Like this autobiographical yet, you know, fun, playful, artsy but not self-serious. Like it's so it feels like so unique and special.
Did you, I'm curious if you have a hypothesis on maybe why that is.
Well, I think that like right around the same time there was like a ton of indies that were, you know, breaking through. Most notably, like, you know, with Reservoir Dogs and Clerks, as me and Paco discussed a little bit beforehand. Clerks was at the same Sundance, Paco?
Yes, they were and they had
Oh,
the
wow.
same producer, John Pearson. So he wrote
Yeah.
this book that I read a few chapters of, which has a long name. I think it's Spike, Mike, Slacker, and a word I'm not gonna say. But it's about, but he, yeah, it was, yeah, and it's funny because Kevin Smith and Guinevere Turner kind of became good friends after that Sundance, and she's sort of a friend of his got a big crush on her, and that inspired Chasing Amy, which was
I was gonna say, I think is she in Chasing Amy?
yes, she also
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think about that.
Yeah.
But, the hypothesis being the type of film that Kevin Smith made became the epitome of independent cinema. And movies were inspired as he moved into the mainstream and
Mhm.
got bigger and bigger, as Quentin Tarantino moved into the mainstream, and there was the whole wave of movies that were made like him in male-dominated spaces and straight spaces. There's a desire to replicate and to create films that are like it, and it inspires a barrage of films that are much worse than Quentin Tarantino's films, but are just as loud and disgusting, and that inspires another generation, or the pushback to the Tarantino thing, like we need to go back to a certain type. But none of them are really taking these movies, which were at the heart of the indie revolution, and trying to make movies like it, or at least they're not getting funded. I think it all comes down to a money thing. So it's like,
Yeah.
As you were talking about, there is a market for lesbian cinema. There is so many people who would pay to go watch their lives be represented. And Hollywood remembers that like once every 3 years, I feel like.
Yeah. Mhm.
And usually at that point, it's been a watered down thing. Do you have like a internal canon of like films that like maybe wouldn't play Sapphopalooza because they're not textually, or just other films that you think like should be considered in the queer canon?
Yeah. So Spice World's a big one for me. I mean, that's not like independent. That's like very well known. But like the Spice Girls are very important to me as an individual. And honestly, I don't know. Like, I just don't think I'd be who I was if the Spice Girls didn't exist. Truly, like that sounds, I don't know, ridiculous, but it's the honest to God truth. And also, I don't know, like a lot of their fans are gay, so that it makes sense. Um, and then, something that I actually wanted to program, and it's like an anniversary too, but it didn't work out. There's Stick It and then Lost and Delirious are a couple that uh, I love, and I think also are like really important films to a certain, like my generation, like a millennial generation. Um, so there are a few that, yeah, come to mind.
Is there like locations in this movie that you recognized? Is there like
Oh yeah.
there's so many things that happen in this movie that feel like Chicago. Like I
So
wasn't always locking
yeah.
it. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, you're good. When you say that, like there was something that happened while I was rewatching that film that was like, it's so like, I don't know, it's comical, but also, I don't know, maybe real, like because there's there I feel like Chicago apartments are like different, right, than other apartments, right? Like I don't know, they're like very recognizable. They kind of all look the same, maybe. And there was a moment where I think it was filmed in like Wicker Park or Bucktown or something like that. And but there was a moment where they were in the apartment. There was like a scene in the apartment, and I was just like staring at the door and the doorknob, and I was like, I recognize that doorknob. Like that's my doorknob. Like is this my like which is like, I don't know. I think like everyone probably has the same doorknobs, but it just felt I was like, oh my God, that's like my door and my doorknob. That's crazy. Which is, I don't know, silly and stupid, but like I was like recognized it in a weird way. But also they're like at the Belmont stop,
Mhm.
and you see the Hancock building, like they're on the like the lakefront, walking around, and it's like, I mean, very Chicago for sure.
So Chicago, I think like places like Quimby's, which
Mhm.
were
Yeah.
recognizable within it. But just like stuff like, the lake. I mean, it's like crazy, but like me and Paco have had this conversation. Like, not enough Chicago movies shoot the lake. Not enough Chicago movies are set at the lake. Probably because sound, if I had to guess, a reason why.
Yeah.
But as part of the montage at the end, and it's on the south side. It's near the University of Chicago, right?
I thought it was.
Yeah.
It might be Lincoln
I
Park.
think
Is
it
it?
might be Lincoln Park too, because you can see the Hancock behind, or like
Yeah.
they're walking and you see they're shooting from behind, and I think you see the Hancock, so I feel like it's got to be north.
Okay, so
They
like
might
maybe
have
like
shot on the south
Oak
side
Street
too, but
or like the seawall
Yeah.
area. What's now the seawall? Because it
it
looked
was
it
because it's on
looked
the rocks.
yeah, it looked different. The terrain looked
Yeah.
different. So maybe I was just confused. But there's so much in there. There's the Gold Star bar.
Mhm.
Uncle Fun. I'm reading this straight from Kyle Logan's article. Maybe this is a good spot to put it in. Our dear friend Kyle Logan, who's a friend of the podcast, wrote an amazing article called "Go Fish at 30." And I just wanted to have a space for Kyle to talk about his relationship and experience with this movie.
Hi, Jeremy, Paco, and Elizabeth. Looking forward to listening to the conversation that y'all have about one of the greatest lesbian movies and greatest Chicago movies of all time. Though, I have to be honest, it did take me a while to recognize its greatness after my first viewing. That viewing followed on the heels of seeing a lot of other indie lesbian movies of the 90s and the early 2000s, movies I watched because of the L Word. I watched The L Word with my now ex in 2017, and it quickly became something very meaningful to both of us. Shout out to problematic Fave Alice. In the years after watching the show, we sought out movies by and starring L Word alums, and to avoid the temptation to just list a bunch of movies that I love, I'm gonna just highlight one. The Incredibly True Adventure of Two Girls in Love stars Laurel Holloman, who plays Tina on the L Word. It's a wonderful high school lesbian rom-com about girls from different economic classes falling in love. But despite watching so many of these indie lesbian movies, it took a couple of years before we got to Go Fish. And on first viewing, I was kind of kept at bay by its self-conscious artsiness and the acting that's very making a movie with friends, something that I have in the intervening time come to love about it. But even on that first viewing, it did make me laugh and it made me feel, and I especially loved how dense it is as a text about lesbian life and identity. Over the next 5 years, it continued to grow in my mind without a rewatch, based not only on the audacity of making a movie that's part essay film and part rom-com, but also because of my increasing awareness of how it had set a precedent for so many of the other indie lesbian movies that I love. To say nothing of how all of this media has impacted and continues to impact my, forgive the phrase here, gender journey. By the time that I pitched a 30th anniversary piece to the reader for the 2024 Pride issue, Go Fish was a movie I'd fully come around to without having seen it again since my first viewing half a decade earlier. When I rewatched it finally to write the piece, I was kind of astounded by how Chicago it is. There are things that anyone who's ever even seen a picture of Chicago would be able to recognize. There's the L and the skyline, but then there are these specific things that are only recognizable to people who have lived here. My favorite of these is the scene where Max and Eli run into each other at Quimby's, and they talk about the oppressiveness of the butch-femme dichotomy and what lesbians are supposed to look like, inspired by Eli's new haircut. Quimby's moved in 1997, so the space that we see them in 1994 isn't the space that anyone who's been to the store in the 21st century has inhabited. But it's such a specific store, a store built on selling independent zines and independent comics with an X, that even though it is in a completely different location now, anyone who's been in the store in 2026 will recognize the store that they are standing in 1994. And something about that just feels very special to me, both for the movie and for the city. As I researched Go Fish and how it was made and how much it inspired the films that followed in its footsteps, it became one of my favorite films, not just as a movie, but as this revolutionary work made by a group of lesbians brought together by ACT UP and the determination to make something for themselves. It's an incredible movie that changed the world. I don't think it gets nearly enough credit. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you all for talking about it. And I truly cannot wait to see it with Guinevere Turner in a few weeks.
Elizabeth, as our resident lesbian, what from this movie stood out to you? What in this movie were like the highlight moments?
Yeah, I aside from the Chicago of it all, there were two moments that I don't know, like really resonated with me, and it's one when Eli gets a haircut. Um, I've also gotten a haircut, going from long hair to a shorter hairstyle, and I also thought it was just kind of like a sweet moment because I don't know. There was like someone a friend kind of encouraging them to do it, and also their like response after the fact when talking with Max about like their experience. There was something that just like felt really natural and sweet about that. And the other thing is the 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 moment when Daria is being like basically accosted about when Dario like slept with a man and
It's
they're like, you're not
amazing.
a lesbian. Like it's pretty wild, but also it's like kind of like a learning. It's like I feel like they're teaching us something,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like because obviously bisexuals exist and like queer is a spectrum, and also like being a lesbian is a spectrum. Like my partner identifies as lesbian and has dated men, and I'm not speaking out of pocket, like she'll tell anyone this, but also believes that like her lesbian identity is deeply rooted in femininity and dates people who have a certain femininity about them. And it's like that can be whatever you want it to be, right? So it's that is such an interesting scene, and for anyone to really watch and experience and also like learn from.
Yeah, gender as we now in our modern understanding of it, it's such a spectrum like you're talking about, and they didn't really have the words in the 90s.
I wouldn't say
Okay,
that.
you're
I wouldn't
right,
say
right.
that.
They had the words. They had the words.
Yeah.
The characters, I will say, not nobody, not queer theorists, but those characters who are representing the perspectives of lesbians in the community don't have the words, and that discussion is complicated. Even in the
Yeah.
scene, there you hear them go from one take to another. I don't know if what your feelings are about that scene, but that scene feels like it's inside Daria's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Like it's a self interrogation, a guilt. Hey, I
absolutely.
slept with my friend because I wanted to, because I wanted sex, and it doesn't make me less of a lesbian. Um, and people's own sexuality, that sort of push and pull. That's what it felt like to me, but I feel like it could be viewed in many different ways.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah, it's definitely wrestling with like the identity and what that means to you, and if that makes you any like if that takes away from your identity in a way, if you feel inauthentic, or and I think it's like I hope that there's less of that nowadays, and that people can just like make the decisions that they feel comfortable making for themselves, and don't like spiral nearly as much, and just like accept themselves for and give themselves some grace for doing what they wanted to do. um but yeah, it's like very complicated and complex, um and I also really appreciate being able to see and experience that.
I agree. There's so many little details in this movie. Those in between scenes where the characters are having conversations, where they're laying
Yeah.
in and amongst each other.
Yeah.
Those scenes are so interesting, so watchable, full with dialogue and representational moments. That's where the name of the film comes. They're playing Go Fish in that one scene. There's the discussion of the honey pot. There's all these little moments that are unique and profound and funny, and make this movie one that I want to rewatch.
Yeah, and I think the characters are also like there's a spectrum of different characters. Like Kia's like so smart and is like I don't know, like a professor
Yeah, I
maybe,
think so.
or yeah, and so it's just the spectrum of characters and like their jobs and what they bring to the table and what they bring to their friendship, is and the dynamic is very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like when we think of, I think like in the mainstream world, there tends to be a very like a version of history where we think like everything just like gets better and like representation just gets better. And then like when you actually like look under the surface of it, it's like, no, like people were making more complex movies about queerness in the 90s and like than they are now sometimes, you know, or
Yeah.
at least like blockbuster movies or whatever. So it's so interesting like how this movie is able to be like so specific about like the concerns of this community and like so complex and like not really like it doesn't like give any easy answers and it doesn't like it's not like simple about anything, and yet it was still spoke to so many people and like, you know, it
Yeah.
made like 10 times its budget on a box office. And like I think like right now like Hollywood producers wouldn't give their audiences that much credit.
Yeah, it's, it's like complex, but I also feel like it, to to go against what you're saying, it is a little simple in that, like, it's like, hey, this is exactly what I'm thinking right now. This is
Hmm.
exactly what I'm
Yeah.
experiencing. I'm just gonna say it.
Hmm.
Like, I'm gonna say it, and I'm not gonna care. And I think that's amazing. I want more of that.
Yeah, I wonder, the filmmakers were also very young, so I wonder how much like there's, I don't know, there's a lot of charm to how so, like how low budget and like amateur the movie feels sometimes. Like sometimes I can feel like you can catch the actors like trying to remember their lines and like kind of like
Mhm.
pausing while they're saying something, but like it like adds to their characters and like adds to like how they're like how the movie portrays them.
For sure. I mean, I think about this so much. It's like, how often are we just like in regular day life having, conversations, and you just like stumble on your words, right? And then like in movies, you never see that, right? You don't like, or you're like trying to like recall something. Like I've done that here in this conversation. Like I'm trying to like, the word is on the tip of my tongue, but I can't really, come up with it. And it's like, just so to see that play out, just even a little bit in art is appreciated.
I kind of want to talk a bit more about those like scenes you were talking about, Jeremy, where they're all like in a circle talking, because it was like it reminded me of two things. One of which was like kind of like the Greek chorus in like a Greek play, like an ancient Greek play, you know, where it's like they'll have like this chorus like talking about like the events of the movie and like what may or may not happen or the events of the play. And then it also just reminded me of like how much like just like among like friendships in general and like friend groups like gossip is important, and just like how like those scenes are like them like trying to like figure out how to like set up their two friends and like talking about like all the complications, and like I think it serves the purpose of the plot obviously, but also I think it like adds like this like extra layer of friendship to it.
I love those scenes. I love that comparison of it to a Greek chorus because it's commenting on the movie while the movie's happening. But it also serves, like you're saying, as like a special place where everyone can go and decompress. Um, Nothing too dramatic happens in this movie, even though there is like infidelity and all these things. But it's also minor and it's also laughed off, and it doesn't lead to miscommunication. Like I think when I was a kid, I hated movies that were predicated on a lie, where it takes the entire movie to untangle that lie. Whereas in this one, it's like they have an interaction, they have a connection. Clearly, it is revealed that they have a long distance relationship that is complicated. They continue to be in community with one another. The friends talk about it and they get them back together. Like that is the gentleness of this movie. It also starts with Guinevere Turner saying that um, the person that she's about to end up with is UGLY. You ain't got no alibi.
I know. She's like, yeah, set that person up with someone else. It's not gonna be me. Like something like
It's so funny. I like I the first time I watched this, I guess I thought I thought I recognized the person in the back in the back who ended up being what's her name?
Eli.
Eve. Eli, thank you. Who ended up being Eli. I was like, oh, I think I recognize that person, and I think it just is from images of this movie or something.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that person's like really interesting looking in the back. It's like, yeah, that's going to be the other main character. So,
Right. They're also,
um,
I think they're also in The Watermelon Woman, but maybe not like a main role, I believe.
It's just creatives that went and made in the same space. I mean, Watermelon Woman is set in San Francisco. Where's that?
That
from?
sounds right, yeah.
Or is it LA? I don't want to be wrong about this.
Philadelphia.
Okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
wrong.
So
I thought
wrong.
I also thought it was California.
It's so sunny.
also-
I guess there is
Yeah.
summer in Philadelphia.
I've never been to
It's always
Philly,
sunny in
so I don't know.
Philadelphia, Jeremy. There's a show about it.
Oh, there's literally a show about it. Thank you, Paco. I really set you up without realizing that.
Yeah.
Have either of you seen any of Rose Troche's other films? Have you seen Bedrooms and Hallways or Safety of Objects? Because I have not personally.
I haven't either, but I have definitely seen The L Word, and I think she directed some.
Can we talk
Some of
about
the
the L
L
Word,
Word.
Elizabeth? Because
What do you want to talk about?
all right, anytime I talk with any of my lesbian friends about the L Word, they're obsessed with it, and then I ask, "So it's good?" And they're like, "No, it's not good."
Correct. Yeah, that's the energy. I mean, it's so messy. It's good. It's like, I don't know. I don't think it's a hate watch. Because I happily watch it. I don't know what it is. It's not. Yeah, it's not good. The characters are not always great people, but I think that's what makes it. I don't know, like fun. It's just fun to watch.
It was
It's so much
on
fun.
HBO. Which channel was it? Showtime? Yeah,
I think it was Showtime.
I remember seeing episodes of the L Word. There was I've talked about this a few times on the podcast. I didn't have Showtime growing up. But then there was a summer where Comcast messed up our bill, where they overcharged us, and they gave us as a repayment all of the channels for the next year. So we had
Yeah.
like Cinemax, HBO, Showtime. We had like Stars.
Mhm.
And that's where I think my cinephilia really like blossomed, because I was able to watch like on that old Comcast on demand where you could watch
Yeah.
everything. And I think I watched a few episodes of the L Word like that, and I think that was when Pam Grier was on, for a little bit.
She seems like she was on the whole show.
Let me see. I'm blanking on.
I think
When oh yes, no. Pam Grier was on throughout
the whole run.
She played Bet's sister. Yeah.
Mhm. And I was very fascinated by it, and I would but I think I got to it late. Like I got to it as Girls was starting and those other shows, you know. So I
Yeah.
sort of like put those in the same bucket. What is the oh my god, Queers Folk, or there's like some other there's like the gay men version of
Yeah,
the
Queer
L
as
Word.
Folk. Yeah.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
I sort of put those in the same, and I was sort of like scared of my sexuality, and like trying to like not look at things but looking at them through a sideways glance, you know. And those shows were like incredibly high production value, but also like shot on video, so they like looked insane. I was very interested in them aesthetically, very interested in them as in terms of the characters, but I never followed the arcs. So I wasn't like
Mhm.
having these conversations that I think when I have a conversation with any lesbian, it's about how bad the L Word is, but that they love it. And I'm like, oh, I just didn't have that experience, but I didn't watch the show. So maybe you have more of an insight. Do you know Rose Troche's involvement? Is it just as a director of some episodes, or?
I think it was a director of some episodes. I don't know the exact episodes or anything, but I know I remember her having credits.
I think
Because
she did the
Guinevere
pilot
Turner wrote a bunch, right?
a few. Yeah, I think it was like separate times though. I think Rose
Right.
was at the beginning and Guinevere was at near the end.
Hmm.
I think that. Let me check. Yeah, Rose Troche directed the pilot.
Whoa.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And like the But I'm a Cheerleader folks were a big part of it. So it's this big like culmination of all these like indie creatives like working in this like you know, what is the golden age of television, or what
Yeah.
what do they call that era? Yeah.
Yeah, Golden Age.
In the space where you really have the trust of these, you know, major markets. So I have a a desire to go back and watch that. Did you watch any of the
Yeah,
the
the new
sequels?
one.
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah, I did. I did watch all. I mean, I watched all of it, but it was not good. In fact, it was worse. um,
What's it called?
but
Generation Q.
Hmm.
something like that. It's so bad. Yeah, it was not good. I There were some characters that I actually did really like, and some character, and then the other ones I just like absolutely hated. And but it was really nice to see like Shane was back, and like it was fun to see the characters again.
Hanging with your
And they
bud.
like yeah, and they like so one. I mean, one of my favorite characters, and I'm sure a lot of people's who like only was in like the first three seasons. Dana, I think it was three seasons. Man, Dana, the tennis player, loved Dana. They like dedicated their bar to her or something like that in the new one, which was like kind of sweet. And so it felt full circle. And so I'm like glad I watched it. But I my partner and I have been talking about rewatching The L Word from the beginning, like the original, and I'm all about it. It You experienced it. It sounds like much sooner than I did because I didn't. I didn't even like. I was I wasn't like, I don't know, shelter is not the right word, but I did like grow up in like a somewhat conservative household. And like, so I didn't really know that like being gay was like a thing ever until I, much later in life. And you look back and you're like, oh, I was obsessed with Sporty Spice. What? Like that makes sense. Like all these things add up, right? But so I didn't experience that. I didn't watch the L Word until I was an adult. And I just like heard about the L Word, and I still wasn't like out, but even to myself yet. But like connecting the pieces, and then was like the L Word about lesbians. I don't know what that is, but I guess I'll check it out. Like,
And here you are. You're
yeah,
programming the
I
premier
know.
lesbian festival in
That's how
Chicago.
that's how it happens.
From Sporty Spice onwards. Maybe when they clear up the rights to the Spice World, we'll see it in the third iteration of
I
Sapphopalooza.
would love that. I sent this to Rebecca the other day. Melanie C, Sporty Spice, is on the press circuit right now because she has a new album that came out. It's pretty good. I'm a big fan. She's also touring, like doing a worldwide tour, which she hasn't done in forever. I've seen her live twice, and like not outside of the Spice Girls. I've had to like travel to see her. And and she's coming to Chicago. And I have tickets, of course. I'm going, but she's on the press circuit, and she's been doing a bunch of interviews, and I've been listening to them, most all of them, and and she talked about, someone asked her like last week about Spice World, and she said that they have the rights now. The Spice Girls, the five of them,
Oh.
own the film, so it sounds like they're trying, I think they're trying to put together the pieces. My guess is they're going to wait for an anniversary and
Yeah.
do something.
A restoration of
I
some sort.
That's yes, and I'm sure it'll be available. They'll probably do some sort of re-release. I hope it's available outside of chains. Um, when it happens, I will do whatever I can to get my hands on it. Whatever I can.
The 30th anniversary is next year, so hopefully,
There it is.
Okay. You've spoken it into existence.
Mhm.
We could actually, I think, say on the record right now, it will be the headlining film of next year's fest.
It's going to be the only film. We're just going to play it 15 times.
Yeah.
That sounds so great. Elizabeth, before we wrap up, we asked our guests the same question. Do you have a recommendation for a restaurant or a place you like to eat in the city of Chicago?
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind is Hop Leaf in Andersonville.
Yeah.
Not because I drink beer, because I really don't. However, I like tequila and more cocktails, but I love the mussels
Mhm.
and the frites.
Yeah.
I can't get enough.
Yeah. My wife and
So
I
good.
have to go every year, at least like twice.
Yeah.
During the summer.
Yeah. I live close enough that it's a little dangerous. Yeah.
That's a great recommendation. Do you have anything else you want to plug?
Merch. We did music box sets merch based off of the team that was they. So the Music Box Lounge was once a lesbian bar. In the 70s.
This is
There's a
important
lot
to
of
talk about.
lore. It is important to talk about. And this is, there's a Black Club article, a great article written about it. And also, if you make your way to the Music Box Lounge, there is like there's an article from the 70s about the bar itself. But they once sponsored a softball team called the Music Boxettes in the 70s. And the Music Boxettes, they like it went on to saying that they were like in on the Music Box float in the Pride Parade.
I love it.
It's so great. Anyways, we made merch, and we made like a vintage logo that I assume it's exactly what it looked like at the time, of course. But Lily Bacon, who works at the Music Box, helped me design the logo. We have raglan tees and some really cool caps. And then, yeah, the punch card this year for Sapphopalooza, if you get 5 out of the 12 punches, you get a bandana designed by Tabby Varaldi, who is a local cinema uh, not filmmaker, but a person who works, she does stuff for CFS, Chicago Film Society, and is just like very much in the Chicago film network.
Has a
And
kind of
she's
an
also
Eli vibe.
maybe, yeah. and but like also like an all-around cool person.
The
And
best.
as Eli is, not that
Yes.
Eli's not a cool person.
Eli's like my favorite. I'm such an Eli head.
I like Eli too. I think Eli's just misunderstood.
Yeah, exactly. I, I bought 3 shirts and 1 hat, and they've already been taken by my family, so I need to come back to Chicago and buy more shirts because they loved them so much. So the merch is going quick. Everybody go support, go watch a film in the Sapphopalooza series, support independent cinema and artists.
I just had one last thing. Well, first off, shout out to Lily Bacon because she also did our artwork.
Yes,
And then
Lily designed our logo.
2, I would be remiss not to mention this, but when Go Fish premiered at Sundance, they gave away promotional nail clippers. So we need to find those.
That's amazing.
Honestly, wait, I'm gonna
I'm on eBay as you speak.
It's so funny because like we did when we announced the lineup this year, we did like a giveaway and we're like, hey, if like guess what you think it's going to be, because I had so many people reaching out to me, people I like didn't even know were like contacting like a mutual and being like, are they doing carabiners again? I didn't get one last year. Like all this stuff. They're like, what is it? And so I was like, I think it would be fun for people to guess. Also, like there's a lot of really funny guesses, and a lot of people were saying nail clippers, and they also said scissors, and I'm like, this item is far less dangerous. Like,
Yeah,
imagine
the liability alone.
That's kind of how I felt. Although great ideas and very fun. I think the nail clippers makes maybe a bit more sense because you could like put them on a keychain. You could like put them on your carabiner, maybe one day. But the bandana feels right.
Mm-hmm.
It's very artistic and it looks cool. So
yeah, once
really cool.
there's 10 Sapphopalooza, someone will have a whole outfit of all the different giveaways.
That's my hope.
items. A decade of Sapphopalooza. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on 4 Stars. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Elizabeth Arnott for talking with us about Go Fish. Paco, do you have any other final thoughts about this film?
Yeah, so Go Fish. Just, I don't know if we mentioned this, but so it premiered at Sundance in 1994, and it was actually the first movie to be sold at the festival itself. I think other movies had been sold like before or after, but it was like it made a lot of. It was a big deal that this movie became kind of the first Sundance hit like that. Which is funny because then Clerks was Clerks, like as you mentioned, Clerks is the one whose reputation has continued, unfortunately. But and I don't know. I feel like obviously I think this movie is really important and is becoming more important. I do wonder like how much of the fact that it's like not remembered as well compared to something like Clerks or Reservoir Dogs or something is that like there's just not it's much harder for women to continue filmmaking. Like a lot, like there's so many women who would just like have like one huge hit or like one really important movie and then like they just like get stuck doing TV all the time. Like the same thing happened with Cheryl Dunn for Watermelon Woman.
Yeah, and I think about oh my god, Crossing Delancey.
Mhm.
She made like 2 movies and then she got stuck in TV and other things like that. So I agree. It's women are given a lower threshold to make mistakes. So if you have a bomb or a movie that doesn't work as well, it's like, well, they didn't live up to their reputation.
Yeah.
And that happens. It still happens to this day.
No, definitely. I mean, like the fact that like in the original Queer Cinema article, like so many of the gay men directors, at least until the 2000s, had like pretty good careers, and then obviously like Gregor Rocky and Todd Haynes, and obviously Rocky has had a rockier time of it, but Todd Haynes is obviously has always been kicking, but he's also had trouble finding funding, so it's not. I think it's hard for everyone.
Yes, I would say it is hard for everyone. Especially it's hard for people with strong visions who, make odd movies in general, and it's even harder to get them made with your vision intact. And I think a lot of these women who are directors are also like, I made my money in Hollywood, and I'm going to go continue to make whatever I want on the side and do other things, and they're fine with that. So I don't want to do a pity party because some of them, maybe don't want to be in Hollywood. So it's like sucks for us because we want to watch more movies by them. But yeah, I feel like maybe Rose Troche wants to make a ton of
well, she's still
Netflix
doing
stuff.
television.
She is, yeah.
I think she did like a Netflix movie a few years ago. I think Guinevere Turner, I mean, she had a pretty good screenwriting career. So she wasn't a filmmaker when they started the movie. She was a writer, and then as we mentioned, she plays the love interest in Watermelon Woman, and she plays a role in Chasing Amy. It's been a while since I've seen Chasing Amy, so I don't remember what exactly she does. But then she co-wrote a little high school favorite of ours, American Psycho.
Yes, I do. I remember that this is the case. That is one of those weird movies that is directed and written by a woman and has like an almost all male fan base.
Yeah, it's really funny because it's like I think I liked it in high school for the wrong reasons, and then I rejected it for a while for the right reasons, and now I'm like, actually, it kind of is good. Like, actually, it's pretty good. But and then later, I think Turner has written other and acted a bit, but she wrote a book a few years ago because she was raised in a cult, and so she wrote a memoir that I'm kind of curious about reading it. But back in the 90s, so something that I thought was interesting about this movie is that we've talked a lot about Wicker Park. We've in fact dedicated two episodes about the history of Wicker Park in High Fidelity and the movie Wicker Park, and I feel
Home Alone 3.
And and I feel like in those episodes we talked a lot about how those movies aren't really about Wicker Park. They're kind of like about the idea of Wicker Park, and like High Fidelity is definitely filmed there, unlike Wicker Park, but it's a lot of the things that it's like trying to represent didn't really exist anymore. And then this movie, being filmed in the early 90s and being released in the mid 90s, like this was really when Wicker Park was like a cheap place, did have a lot of artists in it, and like so, and it looks a lot like grungier than it does in like High Fidelity. Like High Fidelity still has a bit more of the contemporary sheen that we know that it has now. And then this movie, like there are parts where like they're just like walking for blocks and blocks, and there's so many like like empty storefronts and like tons of graffiti, and it's like it's a very different representation of that area.
Yeah. It feels lived in. It feels like the actual neighborhood. Which is rare that we see movies that are filmed on location that are, representing the city that way. Instead you see like the Chucky recreating of like the trash can fire style of the city. And so rarely do you see the city actual like inside the neighborhoods in the 90s.
Yeah, definitely. And I something Elizabeth brought up was like the apartments, and yeah, I just love how many different styles of apartment you see in the movie. Like kind of like the main apartment that Max lives in, and then is her name Evie, their Puerto Rican friend who goes back and like is homophobically assaulted by her mom. Like it's a completely different neighborhood, like a different style of apartment. There's like the loft at the dinner party at the end.
Yeah, and they all feel very like specifically Chicago spaces. And I don't think the movie's trying, maybe they are. To give them credit, but it feels like they're just filming in the spaces they have access to.
Yeah, definitely.
Well.
Yeah.
As opposed to like making some big statement. It's like, no, we're going to film in Humboldt where this takes place or whatever,
Yeah.
Which I really like. And yeah, I really liked that scene, about the family's reaction to her. I wanted to watch like a whole movie about that, and it was kind of just tacked in there. And I think that's closer to Rose's experience.
She was Puerto Rican, or she is Puerto Rican. I don't know if her family was.
If that is
reflective of that. Yeah, I'm not sure.
She says something about being Puerto Rican, but that she's so whitewashed here in this article. She's like, "Excuse me, could I have some of my culture back now?" Which I think is really funny. That's a good statement. And there's so much about these two that their personality just comes through in every way. In these interviews, in these conversations, it's really great, and it comes through in the movie. I really love how naturalism is not the goal with a movie like this, but it still feels truer to life and experience through their like sort of stylized dialogue and like conversation that don't like feel like a conversation you'd overhear, but it's still like really fun to listen to.
Yeah, and I also feel like I mentioned, like they were really young when they were making this movie. Guinevere Turner would have been like 23, 22 when she was starting to write it. And I kind of feel like I was talking like that during when I was like 22. Like I do think like there's like a kind of like self-importance and like self-theorizing that happens when you're young that maybe like when you're older you don't like, you're kind of like, well, who gives a shit? But like when you're young, you're like constantly thinking like that. And like the scene, I feel like the scene of the opening kind of montage of her writing in her diary and like describing like, meeting her love and stuff. Like that feels very like, I'm sure that was something that she had done.
Totally. Yeah. And like, there's like a way of speaking that I think like is like activisty in the 90s that is more like I'm like I romanticize more than like activisty talk now. And like they're both like very important, and they push society towards better things. And maybe that's just like I'm romanticizing the past. But there's like fun like sort of like when they're like have like witty banter about queer issues, it's like very funny and fresh and interesting to me. Whereas like if I was to watch stuff about modern issues, I might turn my brain off a little bit more because I like was in those spaces in college, and I maybe it's just like due to my experiences, and I'm like looking for like where we once were. I really love how much she hates Guinevere Turner's characters hates hippies.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I think,
and she's so mean about it.
It feels very specific to that time. Like I think like there's like I think like she's part of more of like the punk lineage, and there was like a really like hatred of, I think there was like a society-wide hatred of hippies that like is sort of like, now we're like so far beyond that it's like kind of like hard to like why do you hate hippies? But I think like at the time like it made sense. I don't know.
Yeah. And like don't be so crunchy granola.
Yeah. And I mean, like, honestly, like now that that kind of like the hippie brand has kind of been taken up by like the kind of like Maha like style, like I kind of get it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
I what I wanted to mention earlier was when we were talking about location and sort of like how even if like they weren't necessarily trying to make a statement about Chicago because of like because they were just filming where they were, they ended up making one. In the so Be Ruby Rich, not Ruby Rose, Be Ruby Rich. In her queer nuclear so she wrote this famous essay, Nuclear Cinema. And then she later wrote a book called Nuclear Cinema Director's Cut, which is like a compilation of her writings. And in the intro, she kind of it's her talking about like the idea of nuclear cinema and where it came from. And she has this part where she mentions what made the nuclear cinema possible. It's a question that has reoccurred over the years, one that I can only answer with hindsight. 4 elements converged to result in the NQC: the arrival of AIDS, Reagan, camcorders, and cheap rent. And I think like that's like a really like concise way of putting like why did independent cinema, and why did specifically queer independent cinema, why was it able to flourish in the 80s and 90s, and like why doesn't that happen now? You know, why is it much harder for those types of movies, independent movies, you know, queer independent movies? Why is it so much harder now? And it's like because it's like partially like there's a lot of like activist energy around like AIDS and against Reagan, and then like shit was really cheap, and like you could buy like a cheap camera, and like because it's like, you know, this was filmed on 16 millimeter, obviously that film wasn't cheap, but it's like it's gonna look way better than like digital cameras do now.
Yeah. For like what like you have access to.
Yeah. Like you can obviously like there are obviously a lot of like no budget filmmakers now, and a lot of like people who like want to make that type of movie. But one, there's so many that it's hard to like break through like at a Sundance level. And then also it's just it's hard. I guess we talked about this sort of with in our Public Enemies episode about like digital and like how people are going back to like the old digital. But it's like I guess like people just like don't, just the way that digital looks now looks so much cheaper, even if it costs more than in a 16 millimeter film or, you know, Super 8 film.
Yeah. I always liken that to like film itself is a really good format for like just like keeping things.
Mm-hmm.
Like it retains information. As opposed to digital, like on drives that could degrade, and you know, you could restore someone's 16 that's been sitting in their basement, you know, as long as there's vinegar syndrome, and there's other things that happen to film that can degrade it, but if you don't keep it correctly. But if it's been kept in the right conditions, then pretty easy to restore it. Like I was watching like a documentary about the White Sox 2005 World Series run, of course, and I was just laughing about like the fact that like the way that they filmed that World Series, like we'll never get a better version of it. You know what I mean? Like there weren't film cameras running.
Yeah,
it was tape, and they just never thought to like film it on something better, you know? So it's like we're never gonna get like crisper images. So like if you have like someone's like film photographs from that same, it's like, oh my god, there's so much more detail than we'll ever get from the broadcast.
Yeah, definitely. It ends up being like this weird like old black and white photos look really old because of like the technical limitations. And then there's like this period of time where everything looks like really clear and cool, and you can like restore it to looking that like really clear and cool. And then there's like this other like 10-year period of time where everything looks like really shitty and old, and like you kind of like, because of the technical limitations, and like you can't really like restore that. So it's like, I don't know. There's like a weird, sometimes you'll see something from the 90s and think it looks more new than something from 2005.
Yeah, and like the glossiness of current and modern stuff is going to age really poorly too. Like,
yeah, definitely.
That like the super HD, 4K, 8K, like all like the pushing, like that. We're not meant to see people's pores. You know what I mean? So it's like That's gonna age really poorly, and so we're hopefully gonna head to some middle ground.
Poorly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were to rate this movie, give it a star rating, what would you give it?
I would probably like give it 4 nail clippings. Like, I think this movie is like super influential in many ways. I wish I saw more movies that were made like it. It reminded me of a few films that I need to rewatch. Video essay style films. God, I'm now blanking on the name of one of them.
This reminded me a lot of Tongues Untied.
Tongues Untied.
Okay.
Exactly what I was thinking of. Thank you, Paco.
Marlon Riggs.
Yeah, and that's more, even more activisty
Mhm.
and specifically focused in art film, whereas this is more narrative. But still, there was moments, especially in the editing, where I was thinking about Marlon Riggs. But yeah, 4 clips of the nail. What about you, Paco? What would you give this film if you had to give it a rating?
I mean, I hate rating things, it's just like so arbitrary. But I mean, this is a really lovely film. I was really taken to it when I first watched it a few years ago, so I was really excited to rewatch it. I'm excited to see. I hope I can go see the 4K. I think I've been reading a lot about the 4K, and apparently, so the initial run of the movie even was just a blow up of the 16, and it didn't really get the frame right. And so the 4K apparently restores it to a level that hadn't been seen until 2024. But it's a really lovely movie. It's really funny and it's cute and it's heartwarming, and it's just so like, this is such an interesting time in cinema, and the fact that you could get this like really small personal movie to over $2 million is really impressive. And I love all the Chicago aspects of it. If I had to rate it, maybe like 4 stars. Like kind of like the flag, like
Right.
the Chicago
Like-
flag.
Like a 4 of clubs.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Jeremy, do you have any recommendations that you'd like to give the audience?
Jeremy, recommendations. I didn't even think about it to this moment. I watched Hokum last night.
Welcome to a
Hokum to a.
doesn't really work.
It doesn't really work when you say it out loud, but it was funny to receive that text. I didn't like that movie. But I didn't hate it either. I watched Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle on 35mm at the Music Box. And that was a pretty great experience. Holds up more than you would expect. It's less objectionable. And also every character who was insisting on being straight came out later.
That's pretty funny.
So pretty great to have Neil Patrick Harris and Cal Penn, two famous closet cases, be the homophobic characters or insisting how straight they are. Whereas, it's just funny and made us laugh a bunch. I was supposed to stay for the first 15 minutes alone, and instead I stayed for the whole thing. It was programmed by my friend Charlie Terabor, manager at the Music Box. Very smart film mind and a writer in his own right. So I'm going to recommend the the work Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And maybe I'm also going to plug White Castle. Look at them little burgers. The Music Box heated them up in a microwave, and we're giving them out for that.
That's a food hazard if I've ever heard one.
Totally.
It's pretty funny that Cal Penn starred in Harold and Kumar Go to Guantanamo Bay and then worked for the Oh Bummer White House.
They shut it down though, right?
Yeah. in
Yeah,
the movie.
they took care of that. I'm pretty sure. Check the record. What do you recommend, Paco?
What do I recommend? I guess speaking of closet cases, I've been reading the work of Henry James recently. Henry James, famously the first literary incel, but there's a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that he was probably a homosexual. And
What?
Yeah, you heard it here first, Henry James. And I got this book from the library that's just a collection of his like short stories and novellas. And they're all pretty awesome. They're all pretty solid. The two so far that have been my favorite is one called Madame de Mauves, which is about an American who falls in love with another American in Europe, but she's married and they have turgid just kind of romance, and then they don't end up together. And the other one was Daisy Miller, which was I think one of his more famous novellas. It's pretty awesome. He's a great writer. Portrait of a Lady is one of my favorite novels. Sometimes reading the canon, it's kind of just worth it. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah. Have you seen the adaptation
Of Daisy Miller or Portrait of a Lady?
Portrait of a Lady?
I did. I remember thinking it was all right. It's a novel that takes place almost entirely in people's heads and like people thinking. So it's kind of like impossible to adapt, but I thought it was fine.
Playing at the Music Box soon is The Stranger.
Speaking of.
Sorry, Playing at the Heights. I keep making that mistake. Well, I will check out the work of Henry James.
Bogdanovich made a Daisy Miller.
Oh, really?
Daisy Miller adaptation. Famously, it was.
Was it normal?
I think he made it exclusively to try to fuck Sybil Shepherd. So I will be checking it out.
So really normal.
Yeah.
And that was a Vertical show.
Huh?
I don't even know the joke that I'm trying.
Oh, I see. Like a Vertical.
Yeah. It was a Quibi?
Yeah, it was a Quibi. Yeah, it was all. You can watch it all on Reels on YouTube Shorts.
Okay. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, thank you for listening. You can follow us on social media at chicagopodfilm. If you have any hate mail, love mail, comments, complaints, suggestions, you can email us at chicagopodfilmcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Please be considerate when talking on your phone or listening to electronic devices.